All right, folks, welcome to a trade recap. Today was a negative 1 hour loss. Today we took a long on AUD. It went to a loss. We should have really traded today because you can see how the market is closing on the weekly. Right, since if the weekly time frame needs to close in a fair price, he highlights in to close lower down here. And market is currently going up, but it's not supposed to go up at all because we're supposed to have some sort of OTE here. This is a big leg up. Where are we buying? It's just a deep and high price point. I thought we were fine because I had an OTE on the London session with this SMT. I thought I was fine, but overall in general, you can see we're buying very high around here. So as you guys know, the general rule of thumb of trading: buy high, sell low. No, buy low, sell high, buy deep retracement, sell deep retracement, and this right over here was not a deep retracement. You could count this as being a deep retracement, but this right over here was not a deep retracement. And as you guys know, for OTE, SMT is not going to be there at all, right? SMT is not, it doesn't make sense to be a OTE with SMT, right? Market would need to retrace without having no SMT. And that's why this SMT failed, because in OTE, it cannot be SMT. So today, unfortunately, the market is pumping hard right now, but we should have traded. Looking at the overall the higher time frame, we were bullish in a higher time frame, but it's that right there itself doesn't determine we take a trade, right? So we must have a free will, right? We must have a free mind. Right, we must be picky, right? Pick less frequency. But I will counter trade as a good loss in my eyes. It is a good loss, but we must be a little bit more, picky, more smartness, right? Which only happens through time, which only happens through executing. Once you keep on executing, once I see this constantly happen, then eventually I would avoid it. But the setup starts to get in, we'll have to get in, right? It's that only time we'll be able to avoid, setup like these are when we're very once we're more up the ladder, right? At the moment, we're still, climbing the ladder, not there yet. On a daily time frame of a daily IRL to ERL, a daily series upside, a constellation reversal, Thursday low of the week. That right there was the reason why I was bullish, but it didn't make sense to me because the weekly candle, the way you're shaping on the weekly time frame, that was the problem. I was like, it's obviously a classic expression profile, one to the downside, Monday high of the week, and the market cannot close like too small. It needs to close in one-sided way, so it needs to close somewhere down like this or up higher. It cannot just close. Yes, a type of a open high low close concept could be like this, right? What is it? This is the, I'm saying, it could close like that as well, right? It could close just like this, but more often than not, it's going to be a one-sided where it's primarily like this, right? You could have a big wick to the upside and a big wick to the downside. But it's this right here is rare chances, right? They happen rarely, right? They happen very rarely. And when they do happen, it's going to happen. But what we got to watch out is that market needs to close in a fair price. That's all I'm trying to say. When it needs to close on a fair price, it needs to go down lower to close on a weekly candle, because it's overall a classic expression profile 2, profile 1 to the downside, Monday high of the week. So this is a classic profile 1 to the downside, Monday high of the week. We need to close a little lower because the weekly candle cannot just close too small. It needs to close lower because overall it's not a consolidation week. It's a week where it expanded, so it needs to close in a fair price, which needs to go lower. Now go down to the lower time frame, like market context or narrative. As in a bearish drone liquidity bearish bias really had much here. It's just that you have to be more pickness. We need to have more pickness and more, awareness and be more smarter. And that only happens through executing, through constantly trading. It doesn't happen in a day or a week or months. It takes time. But bearish drone liquidity wasn't even here. But we had a bearish strong liquidity. We did have some sort of bearish strong liquidity, which was a classic profile, one to the downside, Monday half the week. That's all we had. We had no IRL to ARL. we had no CRT. The CRT is disrespected, so there was no CRT. You could call it a CRT, but guess what? Overall, to the bullish side makes much more sense because we as well had a wick below just high prices, right? And eventually, this candle looking for high prices. But as I said, we need to have, need to be smarter in the brain, because in lower time frame, this is overall a. You can see to the hourly time frame. This is since there's a daily CRT. This is obviously a hourly OTE, right? Which the market never retraced at a 0.50% mark. Although we did have OTE, which, I thought I was fine because there was OTE in a lower time frame because the London session souped out a CRT, right? Souped out the Edison CRT. I was like, okay, I'm fine. We have a low, high, lower, low, higher, high. I thought was fine, but looking over on the general, that's the lower time frame, higher time frame, high power. Overall, we need to come lower if we're going up higher, right? So we need to have that awareness, smartness in order for us to avoid these type of trades. Although this trade follow all my rules, this is why you guys gotta have pickness, right? This is why you gotta have pickness, and we're taking much more trades than we're supposed to be taking. We should be taking like one trade a week. In this case, we took 2 trades a week, which are both losses. Actually, we took 3 trades a week today. Monday, which was a 1 hour win. Tuesday, which was we didn't take Tuesday. Wednesday was another 1 hour loss. Eventually on Thursday, we didn't take no trade. On Friday, we did take a trade, which was a loss. But as you can see, that's a lot of trades. We should be only having like 1 or 2 trades a week, not that much. And yeah, this is what happened. Now, market causing negative. We had a super low, super high, stable low, stable high, premium discount. We tell discount to the high. We're in discount, so we want to buy up, as well as we have a near continuation. And the Asian didn't make a OT day because they didn't super no low. But the London session did, so I was like, okay, I'm fine because there's an OT and we're buying at the 0.50% mark, but that's a lower time frame. But if they overall look at the overall general of the higher time frame, which is overall this, and it's not even because of the OTE, because knowing this is gonna be very difficult, because if you scale out even more, are you really buying cheap here? Are you really buying a deep retracement? But buying deep retracement would have been somewhere down here, right? Over here would have not been a deep retracement, but over here would have, right? So this is why you have to be using weekly profile more on the Friday days. On Fridays, you must focus more on the weekly profiles, because the weekly profile is overall a classic expansion profile, one to the downside Monday half of the week. So this candle needs to close some sort of push to the downside. And although this says a constellation reversal, but overall, where did the market go overall in the week? Went to the downside. So that means it's needs to close a little lower in a fair price, which needs to go down a little bit more lower, right? In order for it to close in a fair price, which is not even because of the OT, because overall looking at it, you could look at this, okay, the market needs to trade a little bit lower. If you zoom out, look up even higher. If you even zoom out even higher than this, right? You would truly never know. But the OT in the lower time frame was fine. It's just that the weekly opening price, market cannot close like that. It needs to close lower, because overall the week was bearish, right? Overall the weekly candle was going to close bearish, so market did need to go down lower. Probably wondering, well, what were you bullish for the market weekly candle to close bearish? There was literally no setup for me to take to the downside here. There was a setup today to the downside, but I'm not executing that trade at all, because that does not follow drawn liquidity. Although the weekly candle, although the market did go to the downside, we did have bullish drawn liquidity, so I just followed drawn liquidity. And following that drawn liquidity, I didn't take any losses, right? I did take losses, right? But the losses were mistakes, which we learned from, which over in the long term, those mistakes will not happen, but in the short term, it probably occur over and over in order for us to learn from it and in order for us to not make the same mistake, right? Because, trading, repetition teaches a donkey, right? And I'm not saying we're a donkey, but you have to constantly, your mind doesn't get that understanding, okay, I cannot make the same mistake. So you make the mistake a couple of times in order for us to not make the same mistake again. But that's what happened for the market. That's the market context. We do have SMT to range low right over here to the upside, and yeah, that's all we had. We had a 4-hour kilo, which is the 4 SMT CRT to the upside. As well as a 4-hour kilo, which is the 4 for value gap. That's all we had for the day. Now I'm going down to a lower time frame, to the 15-minute time frame, just to keep it straight. At first, we did have a near continuation with the hourly CRT, which never offered a setup because when the market went down here, we did have an SMT with this candle, but that candle never was it that candle? It was, yeah, this candle right here. He never consolidated. So I was like, okay, I'm not gonna trade. And eventually, it didn't give me enough consolidation candles. I was like, okay, I'm not trading that. And eventually, we moved down to the 4-hour, 15-minute entry because of the 4-hour CRT was present now. We had a 4-hour OTE, right? Retracement. Eventually, tapped our 0.50% to 0.86 more percent. I was looking to enter this trade. I was looking for the right number one, which we had the consecutive candles. I was looking to enter on this specific candle because of the because of the total superposition block, right? You can see right here. Why do I count this candle and not this candle? Because this candle wick I respect, so this candle is still going to be the spot of the total soup. But we could have definitely picked the start of this candle because this candle right over here is relatively near this other candle, so this candle is highly likely to get tapped. So the lesson is this multiple lesson here. Anyway, we took the trade, we went to a loss. I took a live account as well. I lost around $200 live account. Beautiful. As you guys know, 20K, 1% of 20K is 200, right? So I took a quick little loss on that as well. Beautiful loss. I'm only risking on the live accounts 1% because, first of all, the broker won't let me risk more 2% or 1% because of the leverage is 1 to 50, so I need to risk at least 1% or 2%. I could risk 2%, but I first want to get used to it. Then eventually I could risk 2%, but at the moment right now I'm only gonna risk 1%, and until I get used to it. But yeah, until I what I'm saying, get used to sizes upsides down because it's live capital, so you need to take your time, right? It's not prop firms and stuff like that. So yeah, this is a trade recap. There's 2 lessons here. Lesson number 1 is have awareness, be smart. Although you can see the market pump right back to our way, doesn't mean anything, to be honest, because overall we do want the market to see the close at a fair price. We do want to see market to come back lower, close it somewhere around here to close it this weekly candle on a fair price. And the lesson is, there's 2 lessons. Lesson number 1, to have awareness, be smart, and to have a free mind. Don't be glued to pattern, because our setups mean they be like, OT, we have the content narrative. We can't just be like, okay, we have everything there. Our rule says to get in. We can't get in, because what that is a pattern. We must have a free mind, meaning we must overall think. We must think deeper. We can't just be patternized. We can't. Although I didn't patternize this, but the way the setup is forming is patterning, right? We wait for a specific thing, So we must to have a free mind where, like, yeah, I'm not gonna take this pattern because I don't see a deeper retracement. And the weekly candle goes at a fair price, so the setup's gonna be lower probability. I'm not gonna take it. So the lesson is to have a free mind and to have more pickness and to use weekly profile more, because weekly candle needs to close at a fair price. And if the weekly candle needs to close at a fair price, and that weekly candle, when it needs to close at a fair price, goes against our bias, we do not execute a trade. We just wait, sidelines until the market gives us that good confirmation, the next day, or if it pulls back down or gives us a good setup, then we can take it. But that's lesson number 1, to have more pickness, to be smarter, to have more awareness, to have a free mind, think more, just don't think in a pattern way. And the next lesson is to enter on this rejection block. Why this rejection block and not this rejection block? Simply because this candle, although you can see the reason I entered this, because sometimes what the market would do, it would give us like this type of entry. Market will, I'm saying, let me give you guys 1 second. Market will tap, market would tap this rejection block entry right over here and eventually just move out, right? But we could have entered all this. Well, although this did go on a loss, but the point is to learn, right? The point is to get that deeper RR, better everything, right? So the lesson could have been, we could have entered right on this rejection block instead of entering this, because why? Because this way, the reason why we're entering overall on this one, because sometimes we could tap this and go away from it, right? Without going to the deeper one. But why would have we should have we entered on this one, not this one? Because this candle is relatively near this candle. If they're near it and they're not kind of separated, usually this candle's resistance block will get tapped as well. But overall, the reason why we entered on this, because I thought, okay, market may not go down there, but looking back into it right now, this candle, they're relatively near each other, so this will highly get tapped. And although it did, as I said, it did go in a loss, but the point is to, you know, over in the future, because that right there gives us more RR, right? Gives us better, you know, stop loss and more RR and more, you know, it takes it's overall better in the future. It's overall better than longer term basis, right? So that's a lesson number. That's the second lesson, but you can see right over here, market did, you know, pullback, which is a good enough pullback, and eventually here. Now this pullback is good enough. You can see now, well, that's why the market, you know, overall pushed back up higher. But we must have free will, and we must not be glued to the pattern. The pattern is set to get in, but you must have the pickness. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna take this trade because I don't see that they retrace me. Although my rule says I'm getting, I'm not gonna get in because we know it looks like I'm gonna buy the low too high. All the rule says to get in, I'm not gonna get in, right? So you must have that independence, right? You must have that will to take the trade and not take the trade, right? Because a setup will occur every single week, every single month, right? So you're always gonna have a setup. The market isn't going nowhere. And this is the market recap. Trade recap, which was a negative 1 hour loss. I also took this out of prop firm. I don't really give a shit about the prop firm. And I'll see you guys later. Peace out.